Watch out.
I don't think they want to do that.
You
No,
got it.
probably.
All right, we recorded.
We're going to listen for our cue beeping. Recording in progress. There we go.
Okay, this is the November 1st, 2023 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. Presents are Kelvin Eugene, Paula Summers, Amanda Barton, myself, Joel Adrian. Present for the planning staff are Eric Schultz and Lee Batchel. These proceedings are being recorded. We ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. First, receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, the matter is uncontested. The board reserves the right to ask questions of the staff, applicant, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application. And we'll open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, deny, or defer the application. Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design has the authority to do three things. One, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Two, grant special exceptions of fact-finding function of the board. Three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. Board may deliberate, make a final decision on a matter by a majority of vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum are present qualified to vote. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And finally, D, the authorization of a variance would not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good. Character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. So that said, I believe we have a deferral for today already.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. For those that are present and online, this afternoon was extremely busy. I did not get a chance to post this, but item number B4, 813 DuPont Road and 804 Orleans Road has been deferred by the applicant.
Okay, I will make a note that Ruthie Ravenel is in the meeting and present. So then we'll go to item A1, which is review of the minutes from October 4th, 2023. If there are any questions, please make note of that if there is a motion for approval.
I make a motion for approval.
All right, so motion for approval by Amanda, second.
Oh, second.
Second by Paula. All in favor? I in favor.
Favor.
I in favor. Any opposed? Not opposed. One abstention because she wasn't here, so it's approved 4-0. Our next item on the application or on the agenda, sorry, is B1, which is 216 Spring Street. It's on the west side. The TMS number is 460-11-01017. Is zoned MU2 /WH and DR2F. Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of one grand tree. Areas.
Okay. Yeah, we're on the crosstown at 216 Spring Street. A couple addresses there. We have on the application 214, but I think GIS has assigned 216 as the project's moving through city review processes. The application is to remove one grand tree. This is the September 29 variance test questions that they submitted, and there's a revised one here I'll share with you in just a minute. Actually, there it is. Sorry, this was updated. And this was resubmitted due to some conversations with the applicant. They wanted to maybe do some clarification and updates to that hardship test explanation. This is our map with the TMS number and the property identified. Legally and through various city processes, there's been some property abandonments and shifts and adjustments to create this one lot of record. It's proposed for a multifamily hotel type use. The zoning lines kind of remained in place. And you can see that there. And some greater context, how the property has frontage on Ashton and of course Spring. The previous use, I think a fast food or some sort of restaurant was demolished. Kind of see some gravel, some job trailers next door. The tree is on the north side behind the 31 and 33 Ashton Street addresses there. View from Spring. This is the proposed structure. Has podium parking and then multiple levels or stories above. Access, as you can see, off of vehicular access off of Spring with a pedestrian access through to Ashton. Took that and blew it up a little better. It gets a little fuzzy, but you can start to see the parking arrangement underneath. The northwest corner is where you see the tree. That dot, that gray dot, kind of directly north of parking. We'll get into, I have very little knowledge of the building just through observation, but I'll explain a little bit about the building there. I failed to mention with the zoning, there's multiple height districts on the lot, so they have to step the building down. You have the higher heights adjacent to Spring, and then it steps down to the residential to the north. That's a little bit of a blow up of the location of the tree and its required protection zone and the encroachment. They're seeking removal. This is the arborist report that was submitted with the application in September. And very informational. I'll share some photos with you, but if you look at the lower, the images on the right, when you look at it straight on, when you're back to Spring, you would almost think it's a grade A or grade B tree. But then when you do examine the tree, it is kind of has a asymmetrical crown. It leans inward toward the south, away from the residence on the north, and it does not have, it's not exactly plumb. It's got a slight lean. From what I can tell, it's probably a natural lean because I was out there and I kind of stomped all around the north side, and with our recent 5 swipes here in the last 6 years with hurricanes, you would wonder if it was pushed a little bit, but it seems to be level and not heaved at all. So I think it's just a natural growth habit there. She gives, or yeah, I believe it's she. No, George, I'm sorry, George, presents the tree as a C grade. And then he talks about if you were to maintain the tree, some of the branches, if you were to prune, but I'll get into that just a little bit. This is the more updated where it speaks to, you did not see this in your packet, but they can explain it. But if you were to try and maintain it, some of the practices that you would have to implement, such as air spading, root pruning, that sort of thing. But again, shows the character of the tree. These again were some more recent images, but it kind of again just shows you start to see the layering and the stepping down of the building, higher number of stories on Spring, and then it steps down and steps down again. And you see here that the parking is basically parking with some sort of, I guess, a cover over it. They can explain, and then how there's like a 2-story, maybe 3-story closer to the east, and how there's the beginnings of a notch out of the building to possibly accommodate the crown. But again, you have the issue of the proximity of the building itself. These are just images. This is from spring. I guess you're looking at the southeast corner. Then the back. This is, your back is to Ashton. This is that little flag pole, if you will, that reaches out to Ashton. There'd be some amenities there, but you can see how the building does start to step down. This is just my photo again, taken, looking due north. And again, I'm not an expert, but even with that much lean, you have a little bit of compression wood on the inside of the lean, that angle, and then you have tension wood on the outside. And again, I could not find any cavities per se, no real evidence of any damage from the past storms, just natural shedding of branches. So with that said, we don't feel it being a perimeter tree, and there's a lot of lots along Spring that are being redeveloped. It's kind of extraordinary shape because of the property line abandonments and whatnot, and getting that frontage out to Ashton, but we just don't feel it meets the hardship test, so staff recommends denial.
Thank you, Eric. Is the applicant present?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff Roberts, JJR Development. We appreciate the consideration and time, and the reason you probably have not seen us before this board is because, to use the pardon the pun, we tend not to go against the grain, although we are prolific developers in Charleston who Lee and Eric are familiar with a lot of things that we do, and we've been doing extraordinary things for well over 2 decades. And we have a reputation of working around trees. A lot of our projects have won many awards, and our heart is also in West Side neighborhood for probably close to 25 years. This is an interesting project, and we understand and respect, and I can't really recall in decades a point of departure that Lee and Eric and our team has had, and this is just a very exceptional and unusual project that we think meets the hardship test. My director of development has give you some, so you don't have to squint or
Thank you.
need a chiropractor to go back and forth with the screen. And these are some elevations, revised, sort of truncated hardship test, site plan, and the arborist report. What you're looking at in the building is not nearly as large in actuality as it appears from the screenshots. This building is slightly less than 100,000 square feet. It also is very interesting that it is a complete new classification of the building that went through Planning Commission, Real Estate Committee, and 3 readings of City Council, that a new zoning classification has been introduced here, which is a price approachable housing. Don't confuse that with subsidized affordable, but it's priced approachable for small efficiency dwelling units, where these units average about 350 square feet apiece and are uniquely suitable for a workforce type of housing that doesn't need a subsidy, that can literally walk to work in front of a transit stop, in very close proximity to a grocery store. So for a young person working at MUSC, he or she could walk across the street to go to work right across from Courtney Street instead of spend 3 hours a day of their life on I-26 commuting. So this is a special zoning classification, which we work very closely with staff and City Council, and was approved with great planning. as a method, as a micro solution for an acute housing crisis. This is also a project that went through the Board of Architecture review, a rigorous process, and went through several rounds. That first round of approvals with pat on the back. This building is clad in pigmented zinc with modern materials and exquisitely fenestrated. What we're trying to do here is create something with the new zoning classification that can provide price approachable housing, small residences, the workforce to walk across the street, and get something that they can reasonably afford without city subsidy. So it's a prime example of the marketplace providing micro solutions to mitigate some of the housing crisis we have in a walkable location. What we have is a site that is narrow. Next to it, you saw a strip when Eric posted the zoning where MU2 workforce. There's a pink strip there. So for some context, that is a city site, which is approximately, which is 40 feet wide by about 160 feet deep. This strip here, GB, this is the site of the city's deep tunnel drainage shaft, access shaft to service the drainage tunnel. We are acquiring under contract this little piece in the back here from the city, and we should acquire that at any time. I don't know, worked out. It's been approved by city council. So we have a building that we're trying to provide something that will be a tremendous public benefit, a whole new classification for the zoning. It is completely consistent with the comprehensive plan of providing it. We understand that this is a perimeter tree, and we don't feel this is a slippery slope. This is not a fancy swimming pool in the Crescent that somebody wants to take a live oak out. We are trying to really fit something that is a great city benefit, that is an architectural marvel, widely acclaimed, and we believe, for reasons that I'll enumerate shortly, really meets the hardship test. And we understand that it's a perimeter tree, but it is not a slippery slope, and we think this is a unique condition that likely will not create any why did you do this for them and not for us. It's just a unique situation. So we think it meets the extraordinary exceptional conditions to this particular piece of property because it's narrow and deep, directly on Septima P. Clark Parkway, the north side of the medical district and the leading edge to west edge. Prior to our acquisition, as Eric said, it was a decrepit non-historic check cashing store. We demolished it. There's 70,000 cars a day that goes by it. The tree that we're seeking the variance for is a grade C laurel oak, which has a relatively short lifespan, which Patrick will enumerate when he just briefly reviews the tree report. We're seeking the variance on this because it's close to the property line and it's within, its trunk is slightly more, a few inches from 8 feet away, which I think we required 14 feet. And congruence of the canopy is leaning toward our property at 214, 216 Spring. These conditions don't generally apply to other properties in the vicinity because in this area of Charleston is the most dense part of the city with the highest traffic count on an arterial roadway. There are large structures, parking garage, medical buildings, fast food restaurants, most of which have no large trees or any trees, other than maybe parking island trees. These conditions, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance, this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or reasonably restrict the utilization. The inability to remove this one tree in a non-visible location, the far rear of the property, would prohibit the effective construction of a spatially challenged parcel in the district of the highest density with a preponderance of large building and parking lot. While not in the building's footprint, the lean in the canopy would require substantial trimming and the building's foundation would encroach into the tree protection zone. It also would have a significant impact on a redesign of this building, which is very well resolved in a completely efficient way, using the property in complete conformity to the city's comprehensive plan, trying to propagate some density for price approachable housing in walkable locations that were widely acclaimed by city council. So we're not looking to, take this tree out because we can avoid it. We always avoid it in every circumstance. wherever possible. That's why the board has not seen us very much, where other boards and commissions have seen us. The authorization of this variance will be not a substantial detriment to the adjacent property nor the public good, and the character of the district would not be harmed by granting of this variance. So I would submit that the granting of this one tree variance of a grade C laurel oak would allow a similar pattern of development that would be consistent on this arterial roadway in the medical district and allow for judicious use of this property that will serve the public good based on its fine architectural materials, unique programming that I went over, and respectfully rear step down to the historic homes on Ashton Street, of which we've incidentally won multiple Carolopolis awards from the Preservation Society. So we really care about West Side, and care about this neighborhood for decades. The single tree is not visible. It is in mediocre condition with a short lifespan than other oaks, allowing us to do full mitigation and plant the requisite amount of specimen trees on another green area of this property where they are visible to the public would be a far greater benefit to the district by granting this variance. So it is truly exceptional and unusual situation that I do not believe creates a slippery slope for the board, but I understand staff's position on, in general, uprooting the tree. So now,
If I could just ask one question, so maybe
Yes, sir.
I should have asked this prior, it's not actually of you, are there people present that are opposed to the application? Okay,
sorry,
You can
in
continue.
support of the application.
Mr. Chairman, with that said, I forgot to mention that through our Innovate site, we did not receive any written comments.
okay,
So
and there are people here that are in favor of the application? Okay, all right, we'll continue.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Patrick and I work for a development company. The arborist George was unable to attend tonight because of a prior family commitment, so just wanted to go over his report. Try to answer any questions that I can. I'm not an arborist, but it is 30-inch laurel oak. He did describe it as a grade C with a significant lean. And in conversation with him and consultation of the Clemson's website, laurel oaks live to be about 45 to 60 years old. So a 30-inch tree would be the second half of its general lifespan.
Thank you. So this time would be for anybody that's in favor is allowed to go up and speak, and then we hear from. Opposed, none of opposed.
Good evening. To the chair and the board, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
State your name.
My name is Audrey Lisbon, and I'm the president of the West Side Neighborhood Association, where this property is located at 214 to 216 Spring Street. And for some background, Jeff Roberts and his companies have been developing wonderful things in our neighborhood for decades, and everything they do has benefited the district and the community, with many of the projects winning awards. This site was the former home of a blighted check cashing establishment, which he tore down and is replacing it with a beautiful building. This is a special building that provides smaller, nice living accommodations to younger occupants that can walk to work at the medical university and the medical district, and a bus stop that's directly in front. And they have made excellent use of the land to fill a need of the city. The neighborhood has been and is very supportive on what they are doing on this land, creating much needed density on a challenging spot. I am very supportive of the variance to remove this tree in the rear of the building and replace it with several hardwood trees on a visible green area of their property. It is an important project that the entire neighborhood would like to see happen as designed. I feel the applicant has met the hardship test to remove this one rear perimeter tree and replace it, and replant other ones, and would be very grateful if the board approves the variance to do so, as would be many of my fellow West Side residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else present that's in favor? Like,
evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, and city staff. My name is Arthur Lawrence, and I live in this neighborhood for over 70 years, young, plus, but I've seen the city, I've seen this neighborhood come from the bottom to the top of what it's in now. And we had special people that invest in this neighborhood. 40 years that when Mayor Raleigh was mayor of the city, I worked with him, planting trees in the neighborhood. I'm a member of the Arborist Day, work with them to plant trees all across the country and the world. And I'm also in the landscaping business also. So when you take a look at this particular area, you see those trees there with vines growing up into these trees, choking it off. And those neighbors that live on Ash Street have problem with that. And it will move this tree, it will enhance the neighborhood greatly. And especially with the design that want to take place at on Spring Street, because for years there was an eyesore building there, taking advantage of the people that live in the neighborhood. It's upswing. Mr. Baker, he wouldn't invest in this neighborhood if he didn't see the growth and what's coming down Haggard Avenue to Spring Street. And coming down Spring Street goes into the west edge. It's fast track. It's a beautiful area. And if you come around Spring Street, you will see the palmetto trees coming around Spring Street. It's puts accent on the neighborhood, leaving the city and make people want to go around, turn around, come back into the city. So we have to do things right, and I have all trust in this developer to do the right thing and to continue to beautify this neighborhood like he did in the past. We can't lose with this, and they know that if it's not right, I would not back. And so we ask you to approve this tonight, and you'll be grateful that you did, and the city will also be grateful, plus the community. The community is the focus, and what will be planned there, we would like to see more palmetto trees around Spring Street going out the city, and for this area to continue to grow and the capacity that is growing now with the medical district and the west edge, So everyone now want to come to the west side neighborhood, because it's a place that you can chill, you can take your child and stroll and walk through the neighborhood and feel proud to be a part of the neighborhood that works together. And so we greatly and appreciate your support for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else present that's in favor that would like to be heard? All right, then those that are present that are opposed. Start with you in the back. After.
Good evening, my name is John Boyd. I live on 22 Ashton Street. I'm the owner of that property, and I've lived on the street for 11 years. I don't need to tell you the reason why we have laws to protect trees. You all know it. The reason I worry is kind of the domino effect of losing trees. As this area has been developed, in the past 4 years, I've lost 2 trees on my property. And in the past 2 years, I've seen at least 4 large trees come down as well, because as more trees come down, more wind comes through, and these aren't even hurricanes. These are nor'easters, thunderstorms that have snapped and killed trees in our neighborhood, 2 of which are the developers of adjacent property. This problem doesn't meet the hardship test because it was a problem created by the developer. you look in the notes, that 21 and 33 Ashton Street were both owned by the developer and were shortened to create this lot. Which is totally within their right, but the tree was there first. The large backyards created a U shape around the tree, and when the backyards were cut out, it created this space and putting it on the perimeter line. Not only does it receive a new zoning type for this building, but they're asking for a variance here. I have nothing against high density building, and I think this building is definitely needed in our neighborhood and resolves a problem. I'm all for it. I think just in this case, they put the cart in front of the horse, and now they're looking to euthanize the horse. Lastly, my concern, well, also, it's 25 Ashton Street is that area that comes out. And along that area, there are a dozen old growth trees, one of which was a grand tree, somehow got labeled dead on the plat. It's clearly not dead. It's had a rough go in the past couple storms, but it's not a dead tree. Those would be removed, leaving just one single tree in, I believe, the property of 29 Ashton Street. So a lot of trees are going to be lost in a lot of canopy. And then the last objection I have is probably more of a procedural issue. But the only sign I saw out was on 25 Ashton Street, and 216 Spring Street is the frontage. So people, the 70,000 cars who go by and the hundreds of pedestrians didn't get a chance to see this, didn't get a chance to weigh in. So that would be more a question for the board of how, I don't know the laws, what's appropriate signage is, but I think that's an issue in this grant. So in conclusion, I don't have a problem with high density buildings, and it is a needed building, but I'm granting this variance will be taking away the one thing that creates a buffer and creates a transition from our relatively low slung residential neighborhood to a very tall building. It will be a substantial detriment to the character of the neighborhood, and I think this Laurel Oak can be designed around without killing the project. And I think it should be. So much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Anybody else present that's opposed would like to be heard?
Hi. Do I need to use this? My name is Caroline. I live actually right next door on 23 Ashton Street.
Last name,
Hi.
please.
Frady, Caroline Frady. I found out about this meeting through the sign on the side of the street. I'm here on behalf of all of the life that is supported by mature live oak tree. It's actually not only do those trees support more life than any other species in the US, they also sequester more carbon than any other trees by thousands of tons in its lifetime. It's really just jarring to me to be clear cutting this entire lot because many of those trees will not even be considered for a meeting like this, especially the ones that I sit under every single day. However, what is jarring to me is creating this whole new development, like we said, in a place that already barely has any trees. This area in the peninsula happens to be one of the lowest in terms of tree canopy cover, and also one of the most severely flooded areas on the peninsula. There are already days where I can't get out of my driveway, and what happens when you clear cut a lot directly next to already a severely flooded location, all of that water that would be sequestered by the root systems of the mature oak trees, all of the vegetation, keeping all of that water in the soil and receiving the rainfall, purifying that water from the leaves, transpiring back into the water cycle instead of just dumping onto concrete, into my backyard, into my driveway, into my home. So building all of this development cutting down all of these trees, asking people to move there. Unfortunately, the peninsula will not be livable if we continue to remove the vegetation. That is one of the number one things we can do to mitigate flooding. So yeah, I'm just here because I'm very concerned. Not only our lives, the quality of my life, the quality of the lives on the street, but also again, the millions, billions of lives supported by one single tree. 950 species, just species alone of moths and caterpillars that 97% of birds rely on. Yeah, the flora and fauna will suffer greatly, as well as people that are living right next door. So,
Thank you. Is there anybody else present that is opposed that would like to be heard? Let's go back to the applicant for short rebuttal. Like to.
Yes. Respectfully addressing the last citizen, there's nobody that has done more to improve the quality of life than Ashton Street, having done 17 historic restorations and exquisite new construction designed by my architect, Julia Martin, and to propagate new life in Ashton Street over the last perhaps 8 or 9 years. Respectfully, and I appreciate this young lady's passion for saving trees, which is precisely the reason we don't come before this board often. We are clear cutting no trees. We're just asking to remove one tree, which is a leaning great seed laurel oak, and mitigate with caliper hardwoods on a green site. We also, while the building sits where it is, there is green space that we used for the site, and that strip that you see going down to Ashton Street, we specifically designed it for residents of Ashton Street not to have a cutout. In other words, that street is going to be closed and that street is going to be green and permeable pavers. And right now it's not a cut through as it was from the highway to Ashton Street. So respectfully, we certainly share the passion of saving as many trees as we can. We are mitigating at great expense with trees that are now visible and hardwood, whatever the city's mitigation requirements, whatever Mr. Schultz, the city requires us to do. So again, we share that passion, but we are not clear cutting anything. Regarding the first citizen, there were a lot of addresses thrown around there. And we own a site that used to be a very busy gas station that Eddie Buck owned, that we acquired and demolished the gas station quickly and didn't leave that blank there, as well as an old Pizza Hut that had sunken in. And that site is getting ready for a different type of development, having been approved through BAR. The site you see on the corner of the Kempton, Patrick and I designed that, and we don't operate assisted living facilities, so that site was sold off to Liberty Healthcare, because we don't operate those things. We are developers and not operators of that nature, which takes a special skill and a special license. So the trees that fell, they were trees in a storm or that had fallen over through natural causes. And we sent teams over there to deal with all that, correct where those trees had fallen naturally through splintering or through a storm, and it had no relevance to this site. So what we are trying to do is remove this one tree on a project that is a public benefit on a whole new zoning classification that provides price approachable housing. We have, nobody has done, as Mr. Lawrence and Ms. Lisbon will attest, as longtime residents of this neighborhood for decades and decades. Nobody has done more for Ashton Street. Okay, and what has gone on that street and revitalized it. And any shortening or changing away lots, most of those lot changes were done with bastardized additions to non-historic duplexes and triplexes, which we cleaved off, changed the lot line, and at great expense, restored those back to their original splendor. Okay, and took off those extensions that were non-conforming additions, that were architecturally hideous. So respectfully, I still contend that this is an extraordinary and exceptional condition, providing a great benefit, a tree that, all trees are important, but we are planting beautiful new trees of specimen variety in an area that people can now see. So we view that the gain and the application of this ordinance, it's not easy to fit a building that is proportional, that's not a giant on a narrow site like this and provide what we are providing on new zoning classification that will provide great benefit to the citizens and workforce in Charleston that can go walk to work. That's really as eloquently as I can say it.
All right, thank you. This application will be closed to the public, and I'll be open just to the board for questions and discussion.
Is it accurate that it wasn't posted on Spring Street, which is the listed address of the project?
We have our poster.
I did post it, it's a gravel kind of area, so it's I think a stake in the ground. I put the sign on the telephone pole just to the right, in between the two properties where the construction trailers are. So it was on the telephone pole. I have a photo of it. I don't know how long it stays up for. The legal requirements that it's posted 5 days before the meeting. Now it's done.
Thank you.
There's, if else have questions, the applicant.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Kelly.
I'm sorry, sir, your name?
Jeff Roberts.
Mr. Roberts. Well, I greatly appreciate the fact that you said this is one of your few times before this board and the work that your company has done to avoid coming before this board. My approach to this is that I take in consideration historically what your company's done, but my question really just relates to this project. And I'd like to know, have you looked at any options to save this tree?
We have looked at options to save the tree. And possible to save the tree. We can't guarantee. We had our arborist examine this tree in great detail. That would involve is very carefully curated pruning of the canopy. Because if you remember that Eric showed you in the rear how we have these little sort of coach houses that are diminutive. It's possible to trim the canopy under the careful consideration of our arborist. And we think the tree has an excellent shot to live. And then we would do it in specified increments as not to shock the trees. But the tree is 8 feet away. We can take measures to air spade the root system carefully, water it by hand, fertilize it, and then there's a little path in the rear here, which is also possible for us to create this a permeable surface instead of a hardscape surface and still be ADA compliant. So we have looked at that, and it is indeed feasible, but the tree would be 8 feet away. We think the tree could have a good chance of living if we employ very carefully arborist and tree surgeon supervised selective trimming of this. It would retain a portion of its canopy, certainly probably better than if the power company did it. That's not saying much, so that was comparison.
No, I understand.
We would do it. And then we can recreate this in sort of a gravel pit where it would still be ADA compliant. We have done things like this before in an affordable housing project we did for the city on the Miss Universe of Live Oaks on Engle Street, which we did that for Mayor Riley. And the tree was just perfect. Rooted a sidewalk around it. So yes, it's quite possible to do it. And we would do everything to save it if that's what this board wanted instead of granting variance. So we can, again, if we take the tree out, plant brand new caliper trees to whatever amount we want on the green space. But there is a plan to potentially save it.
And what are the buildings that are closest to the trees, to that tree? In terms of the development, it looks like a parking space. The top left corner looks like a parking space to the right, an elevated parking space, and to the left, there's a.
Patrick, you want to go over that so you can get the context?
Sure. So this is a parking area that has a upper level deck surface with residential units. That's 1-story residential units sit on this deck. So basically, the way this building works is the bulk of the height is on Spring Street, and then it steps down to more residential feel as it approaches Ashton Street. So in order to trim the tree so that it would be off the building as much as possible, you have to lose probably those two main leaders there. And obviously, site plan, you can see it's about a 6-foot encroachment into the circle.
And what is the building to the left of the tree?
These are existing houses.
Houses.
So these houses here. The tree is directly behind this white deck, which is the White House.
Thank you.
9-inch.
So if I can ask, your thought process of potentially saving the tree, was there the idea of notching out where that tree is, taking like this amenity area, and putting it back there versus on Ashton Street so that the residents have that tree as the backdrop of their amenity space, and then
Well, it's not actually an amenity space there. It's, those are apartment units.
I'm talking
Oh,
about
thank you.
the amenity park that's on that fronts Ashton.
Yeah, that's just grade level.
It was, I mean, if the building shape changed so that you could actually use this tree as an accent of the backdrop, and then, maybe some of the structure pushes onto that little sliver that goes towards Ashton. I guess what I'm getting at ultimately is, first you say hardship, unreasonably restrict, then I hear, yeah, we could potentially save it, probably could live. And then I'm thinking, well, was there thought about, hey, we gotta save this tree, let's design this building, because it's a brand new building being
Correct.
designed. Let's design the building to make sure the tree stays since it's sitting on the property line.
I think that would greatly reduce the building efficiency. Costs would go way up to, you're basically building a new building that's not attached to the
Oh,
existing.
it's
design.
leaving the cost aside, because that's not a consideration. Architecturally, since these are small efficiency dwelling units, each one of these units has to be fenestrated for life safety. So to create a different shape, it really creates building inefficiency. And we did study that, so to really rejigger this building and do that, on how it's so carefully is designed and needs to be appropriately fenestrated. This building is really extraordinary thought was given to it. And we even respectfully, even though these height districts change, because of all the work we have done through on Ashton Street and being, although we're just talking about this project, Ashton Street is related, and the care and time that we spent in working with our preservation partners on dealing with that street, stepping those things down, but also on that strip again, going to Ashton Street, that was green space, and we're happy to mitigate with large trees, in different areas where Ashton Street could get a tree and they're visible. But to reshape this building in the rear would really be an extraordinary hardship and endeavor, and
I have a couple of questions.
Well, I guess I'd say, as I look at this, there's that tree protection radius that's drawn around that tree on that site plan. You had mentioned that you're about 6 feet into it. If you had designed this building 6 feet shorter, you wouldn't even be here.
Why weren't they here earlier? would be the
Yeah,
question.
so I mean, I guess that's the thing, is that there could have been, somebody came up with that shape and these wonderful porches and the cladding. No, they could have figured out a way to create an elaborate park on the back with that tree as the backdrop. Potentially used the little strip that goes to Ashton differently, still provided the green space if that was desired for the neighborhood, and plant the trees there. There's going to be other trees that have to be planted on site. I think that we probably could have had the best of both worlds. Kept that tree, had a beautiful building, made neighborhood happy. People can walk to work, and Spring Street looks a whole lot better.
I guess one of my questions is, I know that the neighborhood president is here and the past neighborhood president, and then 2 Ashton Street neighbors. Did you bring this project to the neighborhood?
this project has a great question. This project has been brought to the neighborhood and has been in the work for probably 2.5 years, and we have been doing many public hearings on this neighborhood, briefings for the neighborhood on what this plan was.
Thank you. I guess it's a good example of, you know, this should be an early stop in the process, not a end of the process stop. It's unfortunate because we find that happens sometimes and things go so far through
Yeah, I
the
guess,
VAR and whatnot.
yeah, the arborist report talks about the lean, but then, you know, there's no deadwood, no signs of pest or disease in this C-graded tree simply because of the lean. We've got staff says denial. And I hate the fact that, yeah, you got a building you've been working on for 2 years. But I think that from the get-go, if the thought process had been, hey, we've got this 30-inch lower loaf we need to save, we have a different design. But you have an option to save the tree and not change the design. Probably work with staff about encroachment into that canopy.
Well, that's, if I could address the board leading up to the meeting, I recommended that they defer. Because I thought it was going to where they were going to trying to maintain the tree, the kind of the tone of the conversation. So the real story will be told as to whether or not it would have to come back to the board for an encroachment variance, is to have the building, everything staked out in the field. I mean, drawings are one thing, but to have a registered surveyor take the building and put it out in the field with you know, the markers that say this section of building is parked, it has the level over top of it, it's 12 feet high. Then this section is the second story residential unit, and we don't have to worry about what's out towards spring. But you know, that's how you're really going to understand the true impact of the crown, and then also its root plate is to have it staked in the field. So that's still a question we could, you know, you all can talk about deny the tree, work with staff to approach, but I'm not comfortable saying it may not be back here until we see it in the field. So I just want to put that out there.
Is this condominiums or apartments?
No, it's pure rental. This is not a for sale product, and rents would be traditionally for a product like this 30–40% less than a typical studio, but high ceilings for people that are really workforce singletons that live alone, your prototypical medical worker making a middle income can come in this door without any subsidy whatsoever. So it's a perfect example of the private sector providing price approachable housing without any government intervention.
So what's the rent?
That's what's established.
It hasn't been established yet, but I'll give you an example. I mean, if the rent of a Class A studio is $2,000 a month, the anticipated rent here would probably be somewhere in the 13s. And in order for a workforce person to get that rent here, we would have to drive at least an hour on 26 to do. So, you know, I hear what you're saying. If the building was shorter, it would be inefficient. We can't shorten it and make it work. The building, as I said, looks much larger in the renderings. It's less than 100,000 square feet. It's by comparative size, somewhat diminutive, and it's on a narrow lot. So what we're trying to do is really do the best of both worlds. We wish we didn't have to come here for the variance. We almost always work around the tree. It's a very unusual and extraordinary circumstance. And well, Mr. Yuji, I know that, you know, it's not directly pertaining to this application, but we have holistically done really very neighborhood centric things. So we're not a bunch of Visigoth barbarians coming here wanting to pluck this tree out. So the ethos of the applicant, even though it's not germane to
I
this,
like the project. I like the look of it and the location that it is. It makes sense. I really don't have a huge problem with it. I do understand the concern voiced by the opposition, and I think it's a tough decision.
Well, it is a tough decision because you've got neighborhood support, but I personally don't see how it actually meets the hardship test. Narrow lot, yes, but I think that building could have been designed and with that property.
And I'm kind of confused as to why they're not just planning to save the tree. I mean, if there's a way to do it without redesigning the building, you say, you know, do the path a different way and, you know, see how it goes. I mean, I feel like that's the way I would lean.
And Mr. Roberts, I've met you before, and I'm familiar with your work, and I'm generally supportive. So please don't take my other comments as anything negative towards this. I was just expressing my position. So that's all.
No point taken. This is, we all want to save trees. We all want to provide attainable housing for people. We want to clean up lights on the city. We want to conform to the comprehensive plan. But I would say that stepping this, because we have some anomalies as part of the hardship, it steps. This property steps down in the rear on a height district, and rightfully so, because we don't want to crowd the houses on Ashton Street. So we have a diminutive building on a narrow site with height district that steps down, and we need to be respectful as not to loom over these historic cottages that we spent so much laborious time and effort to restore to 100% Carolopolis condition. There are a lot of considerations going on here. And again, we feel that these are extraordinary and exceptional conditions, which you will unlikely ever see again on a particular project. And we are all for saving trees whenever possible. And that's why we're asking for this variance, because we think we have respectfully met the hardship test because of all the consideration which are special and unique on this property.
I mean, I think that's a valid argument if the tree was in the middle of the site, right? It's, but when you look at the aerial and you see the vegetation in between the residential side and the more commercial side, you know, that's consistent with what's already there in the neighborhood. I agree, it's a fantastic project. It should be excellent for the area. It just seems that I'd rather see a variance for an encroachment than for a
Well, somebody can make a motion or, you know, deferral is always an option to give staff and, the applicant time to look further into the plan to potentially save it. It's unfortunate that the arborist could be here to further explain, what they're looking to do. You know, I find the lean concerning, but we don't have enough information about it. And it's kind of late coming in here. That's like.
So I guess, if I'm correct, deferral, if we voted, obviously approve, wonderful for them. If we voted and it was denied, then we'd have to come back on an appeal.
Well, they have the option to appeal, or they would
We have to redesign.
and come
But
back.
if we defer, then there's opportunity to meet with staff, discuss and see first if staff would potentially say, okay, we would be supportive of this because of X, Y, Z versus denial, and then it comes back without any harm, no harm foul.
There's the potential of it coming back in a different form, not a request to remove, but to reduce the required minimum setback. Again, you learn and you see the real deal when you stake out the project in the field. You know, we don't know exactly if where the rod man was when they surveyed that, whether they interpolated for the width of the trunk, you know, and, you know, I kind of always say we measure the 14 feet from the face of the trunk, not the center of the tree. And, you know, so, but to stake it out, you're going to learn a whole lot about how close. And then working with alternative materials, you know, I can't recall, it's been to TRC, obviously, that's where they learned that the variance was required. I can't recall where they are with stormwater management, whether they're doing anything in the rear there or not. You're in a pretty tough basin right there, and I don't know if you're prepared to speak to that, if they're the engineer.
I can speak briefly to that.
Trey's not here, but so there's a lot, you know, but you learn a lot by staking a building out.
My inclination would be to defer because I think that gives you the most options. think if we voted. At this point, I'll just say I would vote against your application and deny. And if there was a majority that said deny, then it's done. But if we defer, you have the opportunity to come back, present again, and maybe things change.
Well, we would prefer to have a unified solution because this building can respectfully, we always try to work within the conformity of what I said in the beginning, that I can't really recall in decades when Lee or Eric and us have had a point of departure. We play nice in the sandbox with others. So we can have a plan to save the tree with experts. But as they say at the Mayo Clinic, I can't guarantee it. The only thing we can guarantee is that we'll put every effort into this patient with top care to do it, and we're willing to do that and go through the expense. I think Eric even has but the board hasn't seen it. Eric even has a preliminary analysis of it that we may have sent. So we want a unified, happy solution where everyone can sort of get something out of this.
Certainly. I think we're on target. We're on the same page with you as on that. And I'm still leaning towards, unless, please, Eric or Lee, let me know, but my inclination would still be for a deferral. That
Well,
way,
I want to make sure I understand what the applicant is saying. Are you changing your motion? Or are you still requesting a motion to remove the tree? That's what I just heard. I want to make sure.
well, I think the only thing we are here to review because of what was posted would be the removal. If
That's
there's
correct.
encroachment, I think that unfortunately has to get posted as encroachment.
Well, that would be determined once we have the infield meeting. We understand how much of encroachment, how much of that ground is impacted. We have to, go out there with a big rod and say, this is that, if you look at this, image here again, I'm not studying these. But when you look at the site plan, I assume this lower right image, that white patio is above the parking and the unit is actually due east. So is that high enough to accommodate the crown in there? Not maybe have that visible because people would be knocking their heads in the crown of the tree, but then do you lose a couple spaces to move the spaces, that whole facade of that building south to accommodate the roof plate? As I kind of just drew here,
I'm gonna make a motion.
so, I don't know. But you won't know until you stake the building out and understand the true height of the way the building steps away from the tree.
I make a motion and move for deferral.
I'll second.
Right, so the motion floor by Amanda was for deferral. Seconded by Ruthie Ravenel. Any discussion or questions on the motion?
No discussion on the motion. It's just, well, I would support that. I tend to think that if someone comes before a board and they want to vote, whether or not their motion, what they're requesting will get approved or not, I think they have that right. It's just my two
They
cents.
do.
No, I understand. I understand the board has the authority to sui sponte referral. This is, in my opinion, that's not what the applicant is requesting, but it's just
Agree.
my opinion.
But if we vote to defer, he's got a second chance. We vote to deny, it's done. He has to work
But
around.
that's
So
that's his option.
At the deferral, though, he could decide, you know what, we're just gonna work around and mitigate and we're gonna keep that tree. And then this application is irrelevant and he brings a second one for encroachment or something different. But if it's determined in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever it is, that, there is no way to do this, then this application just comes back before us. Whereas if we deny, it's done.
No, thank you. I understand procedurally.
And then, all in favor of the motion, say aye in favor.
I in favor.
Aye in favor. Any opposed? Okay, so the motion for deferral is approved 4-1 with Melvin as the Thank you for your time. Dude, that's straight. Our next item on the agenda. The item B2.
I'm sorry, I get upset about that.
And B2 is 1910 Herbert Street. It's formal Iberian TMS number 46402000051, zone HI. Request a variance for section 54-327 to allow the removal of one grand tree. Request a variance for section 54-327 to allow the removal of one protected tree. Eric?
Very good. We're heading up into the upper peninsular area, the neck, if you will. 1910, 1900 Herbert Street. Again, we're in TRC and we assign different addresses based on the number of buildings and so on and so forth. But the TMS number, here's the variance explanation and answers to the hardship test. The property, note this is my wonderful map created by staff, and it identifies the property. The city owns this property. It was purchased many years ago. The applicant can get into that. The city can actually tell you how long we've owned it, but the whole purpose of buying this lot is to relocate our fleet operations, our fire training facility that is on the Magnolia site, off of that site, and create a brand new facility for all those operations. So note the white, this is gives you a little more context. So we have King Street, and then you have Herbert, you have a couple north-south streets there, Anthony. But the long whitish diagonal line is railroad. And the city was approached by the State Ports Authority and the state railroad, I can't remember, Palmetto Railroad, about, you know, that whole deal that to move the cargo, both national railroad companies, I guess CSX and Norfolk Southern, have to serve the port. So, and they don't share the same lines and what have you. So this is what it is today. You can see that there was a previous industrial use on it. That's gone away, a railroad. This is the tree from that small little piece of Harmon Street that dead ends and actually turns into like a half a right of way. So that's the gate that once existed for whatever use was there. This is the grand tree. Behind it is the protected live oak as well. Just a shot of both trees, live oak right, the 21-inch or so live oak on the left. But this is a telling map. So project site in the top, but note how there's a funnel shaped parcel being carved out of our property. And that's because the rail has to come flow south and then curve and make its curve over to it curves and it makes itself over to Milford Street, parallels Milford, and then crosses King and then heads north again. So it's a big rail loop that has to be built as part of the Ports Authority. And I don't know if they condemned or the city worked with them. The city staff can explain that. But so we have X amount of acres. We're getting it gets shrunk down. Our operations today has nearly a footprint of 19 acres, and we're trying to cram all those operations onto 14. So, and that's with the removal of that additional land. Not only that, that also has to serve as a drainage easement. There's some easements that wrap around the north, west and north side of the property. And then we have to get the outfall underneath those railroad to that little spit of green that you see by the waste water plant. So just again, a blow up of the area you can see here once you see the site plan. Drainage easement in gray and the future railroad parcel, but it's not really future. It's going to happen. It's I've heard that a local engineering firm is designing it now. It will start to come through city process. So this is the, I mean, they're building a 4 or 5 level garage just to handle the employee parking, other fleet vehicles. I won't get into explaining the whole thing. You got fuel facilities, you got car or, you know, the maintenance garages, and then the fire facility on the northward and west side, and then bins to hold materials and what have you. And you can see that there's planned controlled access points, and one of them is off of the Harmon Street. And that gray area west and north is an existing ditch with trees growing along the perimeter. And then we have these 2 trees that happen to be in the driveway. This is a blow up. A lot of tallow out there along the perimeter, invasive. We'll talk about that in a minute, but along the drainage ditch, we met out there. All the non-invasive trees will be maintained. So we have an incredible asset here with the city. David Grant, our urban forester, also the tree and park administrator. He's got track training, which is the tree risk assessment, qualified certified arborist. So the image in 2007, I guess when the facility was, maybe they were mowing grass and stuff out there, and then 2015, and then he has the current photos and pictures. We believe after meeting David on site that the tree was struck by lightning. This is not the lightning strike wound, but this is just included bark, quite a long seam of in where, you know, trees put girth on over time, and they sandwich the bark between the 2 leaders or branches. He points that out. So photo right, there's a crack, and then the exit, what we think is the exit of the lightning strike, is in the trunk lower. So it came down through the trunk potentially. That's the theory, or the idea is that it was damaged in that regard. Obviously, some branches have been either sheared out by storms or lousy pruning cuts or whatever. The 23-inch oak, I thought it was 21, I'm sorry, has some, you know, it's not a grand tree, but it has some issues as well. So in this case, I think it's an extraordinary property in the neck. You don't find that large of acreage open for industrial type use, but to have a good chunk of what you thought you were buying years ago taken for another public use, no other opportunity to buy additional lands, the shape, the means of access throughout the site required for just the large trucks that are coming and going. You look again, the radiuses, the drive aisles, most of the biggest stuff will be coming off of Harmon. The front on Hermit is more like the pedestrian or the passenger scale vehicles. You will have the one big truck access on the far right, because that's where the fuel station is, but the way they have to circulate through here, it's unfortunate. And then once we've learned all this about the tree, here's David's signature. So staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 45. So you have the 35-inch oak and then the one protected tree, total of 10 inches of native canopy trees on the lot. It's going to be difficult. They're starting to investigate that, if that could be achieved. 4-foot chain link fence for the perimeter trees necessary on site. Eradicate the invasive species, tallow, Japanese privet around the perimeter. Provide a landscape plan for staff review and approval.
Thank you. Is there anybody present that is opposed? Yeah, I'm present, would like to be heard.
I will state again that there was no written comments submitted via Innovate.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Chase Anderson, Senior Project Manager with Capital Projects Division. And we've got David Grant here with us and Evan Most, Deputy Director for Capital Projects, and ADC, our consultants, and our contractors from Edifice. We too have been working on this for a couple of years, and we've made a lot of efforts to try to avoid, these trees. But what we've come to realize is, as there's such a large program coming from Milford to this site, that we need every square inch that we can possibly gain. And I think I just want to give you a brief history of what we have of the program. I think Eric did a great job showing how we meet number 1 and 2 of the hardship criteria. We've got we're going from a 19-acre site down to a 16-acre site, and then 2.5 of those acres are going to a railroad, and then 1.5 is going to a drainage easement. So we've got the north, east, and west portions of the site becoming non-usable for us. So we're effectively only in 12 acres of usable space. So I think we have met the extraordinary and exceptional conditions for the site. And unlike any other in the vicinity, in fact, the drainage corridor drains 50 acres of upland properties around this site. So what I want to speak to is the third criteria, more of the exceptional or the unreasonable restrictions for utilization on the property. So sorry, I got backwards here. So on Milford Street, we have 5 departments with 9 different divisions. Public service, their stormwater management, traffic and transportation, fire, and police. But within public service, we have environmental services, so that's our garbage and trash trucks. So with those are 83 staff people that will be moving to this site. The fleet management, got 24 staff, and these are servicing 383 of our fleet vehicles for the city. Streets and sidewalks division, which maintains the paving and sidewalks for the city, it's 24 staff over. Stormwater management, they have the Vector trucks that are at least 40 feet long. They're coming over here, 57 staff, growing to 65. Traffic and transportation, they have their sign shop, signal shop, coming to the site. 19 employees of growing to 29, and fire, which includes fire training and fire technical services. So in order to have an accredited training fire facility, we have to maintain 2 acres on this site dedicated to fire training. And they are also bringing 15 current staff and growing to 25 staff. And then technical services is the warehousing for all of our fire stations. So they hold all the supplies that every fire station goes to when they need extra supplies, backups during storms. And they also service all the fire truck fleets. So if any fire truck is down, they go in, we'll be going to the facility for repair. And we also have a police radio shop. So five different city departments, 9 different divisions, 269 total staff. It's what we call as the Gilliard for the working people of the city to keep the city operating on a daily basis. They've been at their current location for way too long. I don't know if you've been out there. Facilities are in deferred maintenance and, it's well past due for their new facility. They provide the basic and essential services for the city. So some people have asked why didn't we find more land for this? And we did look, we understood early on that we needed more land. We teamed up with the real estate division. We actively looked, made offers on land. We vetted parcels and we weren't able to come up with anything within a reasonable price. This was during 2020, 21, 22, when land prices were rising. We looked at satellite facilities. We considered breaking up the departments, going to Johns Island, going to Cainhoy, going to West Ashley. The users looked down on that approach, considering how much drive time that would take, hiring up for supervisors then to manage those different satellite facilities, not to mention the purchasing and development of those sites. Positives of this site, it's already owned by the city, bought 2008. It's in the Magnolia Tip District, which is beneficial from a financial standpoint, and our bonding capacity to actually build this facility. It's zone heavy industrial, surrounded by light uses, centrally located on the peninsula. So despite the hardships, it's still the best property for the use. So once we got serious about developing this, designing this, we realized that by nature, industrial uses are ground floor uses. They're land intensive, so the fleet bays are on ground level, mechanical bays, repair bays, trailers, heavy equipment, all are kind of on land. The only thing that we could raise was parking. So we decided to add an enormous expense to the project by building a parking garage. But on the plus side, it does add longevity to product, to fleet vehicles and other equipment parked inside. And essentially, we created more land. By buying more land, all of it was at a premium, and it would require, environmental mitigation, because most of the land in this area has some sort of contamination. And if we were to buy more land, we'd also have to account for stormwater, about 30% extra land for stormwater storage, plus the time associated with development and purchase of the new land. This parking garage is 135 feet by 360 feet. So each level is 48,000 square feet. So we created 4 acres of parking, 1 acre at least per level, in order to get this done. So the reason we're coming for the variance is yes, every square inch of this property is planned for and is necessary. Any other additional reduction in usable space on this site has a negative impact on the city's ability to provide the basic and essential services to the citizens for now and into the foreseeable future. We won't have a chance to rebuild a facility like this for any time in the foreseeable future. So, and then the circulation through the site is critical. We've got a lot of different uses, a lot of different types of vehicles coming and going. It's absolutely critical to have the large turning radiuses and access on the Harmon. And keep in mind, we're still not accounting for an acre of parks in this program over on Milford Street. We still have to find additional land for that, and 10% of the large vehicle parking. So I just want to address why we're coming for number 3. Number 4, no substantial detriment to adjacent property and district character. The trees are beyond the security fence. They're off of Herbert. The live oaks are graded C and at risk of failure. And are recommended for removal by the urban forester, so. I hope that gives you a little better explanation of why we're requesting the variance and the hardships.
It did. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else present that wants to be heard? That's in favor.
In favor, yes.
Okay.
Edmund Most, Deputy Director of Capital Projects, and I get the fun job of trying to always fit 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag over and over. This project is a lot of firsts for us. It's unique in a lot of different ways. And I think Chase was very detail oriented in trying to identify a lot of things. Very early on, I should say too, that this site plan was created by 2 landscape architects combined with about 60 years of experience. So we do site planning every single day. I know Chris Cook is going to kick me right now, but we're going to take ownership and say that we really did this building layout because we knew the program best. We know the city staff and the city departments best and work with them on a daily basis. It's a really hard thing to sit in the mayor's office and say, yes, we need a parking garage and it's going to cost the city taxpayer millions of dollars. And it's not going to generate any revenue. That's another first that we have here. This is I don't want to use the words cash cow, but the major revenue generator of the city is parking fund. And this is not going to create any revenue at all. So that's difficult to say, but we needed to do that because you cannot find land. You cannot. And we have worked extensively, like Chase said, and we looked in West Ashley, and it was easy for us. I mean, this is what we do every day. We're site planners. So every time we found a parcel, we sat down and we site planned to try to figure out what departments we could put there. There was just no way around it. And unfortunately, East Grand Tree or this Grand Tree and the protected tree, they're kind of on the edge there. They're not in the middle of the development. But the challenge here is that's really where emergency services, fire department is going to be. And you can't elevate them. You know, they have all their apparatus is heavy. Everything's, 40 and 80,000 pounds. It's going to be driving back and forth. There's going to be a lot of access driving in and out all day long, in the mornings and the afternoons. We have those 3 entry and exits onto Herbert Street there. We really need that other exit there. And that's right in the middle of that. It's right where all that vehicular activity is, but also their loading dock. And we started with a loading dock and we just said, look, we're trying to make more space here. We scaled it back to a loading area. The bottom line is we don't have enough land, and this is the absolute best site plan that we put together. We looked at every parcel around our facility to try to offset and move program off of this. People don't even want to take our calls. They are not interested in selling land to the city because they want to develop it and profit it. We're building this facility for the taxpayer to serve them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else present that is in favor would like to be heard? There is no one opposed. We'll close the application to the public to be open to the board for discussion. Questions?
I found this site plan a little hard to read, just it was hard to enlarge it. So could you go back to the plan, Eric?
That one or the
No,
overall?
the overall.
Huh?
Overall. And it's maybe my eyes. What's the rectangle up top with this? I can't read it, I'm sorry. That.
That is, this is a fire training tower.
It is, okay, that's where the tower is?
With a burn room.
Yeah.
And the trap around it.
Understand, because it's unfortunate that had to be here because it just eats so much land and it sits there unused, the great majority. I'm very familiar with Milford Street. And, it's almost like that should be a regional thing somewhere where all the, the city, Mount Pleasant, North Charleston, you have a big, facility where they could all do training. And that would help your site plan.
So there have been many discussions over the years about having that facility that everyone's using, and all the different jurisdictions cannot get together on it. And for us, the clock is ticking.
Yeah. So Milford Street is going away because
Magnolia had purchased that property.
they have, that's right, okay.
And
Okay,
we got
that
this
was in your-
property as part of that deal.
Okay, I know I read something in there. Okay, thank you.
We're leasing it from it.
Yep. And it is old and it is, I mean, it's crowded even on that acreage.
It was originally a CPW shed, that was built, I think, in the 60s.
Any questions or any other discussion? Sorry, motion, as I look at the trees, they certainly are very different than when we saw in the first application. I'd be supportive.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about removing live oaks, but I think they're really challenged on the site. To get everything on there. It's needed, especially when you think about the ingress, egress, and the garbage trucks and the vectors, and you've got really good equipment in there.
Well, and the conditions have changed since they originally acquired.
Yep.
Your motion.
Yeah, I make a motion to move to approve a staff recommendation.
Vote for approval by Amanda. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Kelvin. All in favor?
I'm in favor.
I'm in favor. Anybody opposed? Motion's approved unanimously 5-0. Thank you.
You.
Right, our next item is item B3. 1995 Daniel Allen Drive. Daniel Allen, the TMS number 275-0000-080, 311 and 312, zoned DIGO. Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 2 grand trees.
That request will be modified to 1 because 1 is dead and clearly an F, and we'll see in a moment. Application. Their explanation of the hardship. 3 parcels. I don't know the history of how 3 got created, but this is part of Daniel Allen master plan. This property is opposed to what used to be the blackball soccer stadium and office building. And it used to be the very first home of the sales building. That trailer is still there and has a different purpose, but that was the very first sales. Zone DIGO. It abuts, or Beresford Creek abuts the property. They were starting to lose land. They went through the OCRM permitting process and put a pretty significant bulkhead on that curve and got a permit to build a dock. That was the original little loop for parking for the sales building. This is my back is to Daniel Allen Drive. We had 1 tree just die. I can't figure it out. Someday somebody's going to do a good thesis about saltwater intrusion or sea level rise or whatever is going on. You strip out one side of the creek and put a bulkhead on it, what may affect that may have whatever, but so the trees are suffering. They're still viable in the what we call the 20-foot visual buffer zone, but the project is to build a small inn, if you will, hotel event space. The concept is maybe you're planning a wedding, you get the event space and then you just stay right on site type thing. Little cottages and detached buildings, you have the existing conditions in that wall, the way it was constructed, permitted by again OCRM, Ocean Coastal Resource Management arm of DHEC. Again, the existing conditions. So a monster live oak, it had its heyday. The red one we modified to be red because it's clearly dead. This one is, it's almost, you almost, it's alive, but not by much. So we'll zoom in at it, but it is a 1921-22. Forrest Evans with Natural Directions verified the 30-inch oak is F. He says poor condition, it's dead. Then the other one, a grade D. These are some notes that the engineering firm, Seaman Whiteside, took while out on site. You can see the F pictures, that's the red tree. This is the multi-stem. It's got some green tissue on it, but it's full of Spanish moss. I don't know if it's the hurricane, salt damage, saltwater intrusion. It's a little bit high off the actual interface with the ozone critical line, but something's going on. So I can't say it's an F because it's not quite dead, but it's on its way. Staff recommends approval with the condition of 62 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the lot. I'd like to see them plant trees in the visual buffer to enhance the density, to include vegetative strip with appropriate species, cedars, palms. That vegetative strip is against the seawall. Must use 4-foot chain link fence to protect the visual buffer zone, and have a landscape plan approved both by DRB and DRC.
Thank you, Eric. Is the applicant present? Is there anybody present that's opposed to this application? Would like to be heard?
Thank you, Eric. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Malcolm McGlynn, civil engineering project manager with Seaman Whiteside and the applicant for the request. As Eric mentioned, this is a small hotel and event space we're proposing on this side across from the former Blackbaud soccer stadium and office building. The total site is approximately 1.55 acres in size. There are 6 grand trees located on site, with 3 located just adjacent to the site. The site is unique in that it's bounded by 3 sides by OCRM critical area, as well as Bearsford Creek plan east there. Per the Daniel Allen master zoning text, there is a required 20-foot visual buffer zone adjacent to the OCRM critical line, followed by a 10-foot building setback off of that critical line buffer. So in total for the site, between the buffer zone, the buffer and the building setback comprises approximately 50% of the total site's area. As you can see, the grade D multi-stem tree there is situated outside of that buffer and setback areas. So in order to site plan around that, and given what we would consider a high risk, of limbs falling potentially during strong winds or storms, we would really need to give probably more offset and care, not situate anything that could be compromised by branches falling or any kind of property damage or damage to patrons of the site. So it really would be greatly diminishing the developable area of these 3 parcels. We have several buildings on site. We've situated them to the best of our ability to minimize impacts to the other existing grand trees that will remain for this development. We've got a centralized ingress egress driveway situated between the 2 existing driveway curb cuts across the street. That has been coordinated with the City Traffic and Transportation Department, and it's been determined that's the best location. So in order to situate the buildings and then take into account the vehicular loading and unloading of guests of the hotel, and these will be valeted parking spaces, we really landed on this site plan as being the best from a circulation and pedestrian standpoint, and as such would be required to take out this multi-stem kind of on its way, as Eric mentioned, live oak tree, and really want to enhance those views to the Bearsford Creek and critical area there. So we feel that in granting this request, it would be to the best of the public good from a safety standpoint, as well as potentially property standpoint, should this tree go into further decline.
All right, thank you. Anybody else present that would like to be heard? Yes.
I'm Forrest Evans with Natural Directions on the arborist on the project. Like Eric said, the tree is struggling to live. I think we feel like the huge bulkhead that was put in previously has caused a salt issue with not only those two trees, but a couple of the other ones. The tree's not worth saving. It's, I don't even think, last time I was out there was a while ago. Eric's been out there more recently. It's, I don't even know if there's any buds except for like one branch. I remember seeing, maybe one or two branches that had, some sucker growth, some water sprouts, on the branches, but, it is past help. And obviously, any sort of construction, and any more stress would just make it even worse. And obviously save it, you'd be causing a huge liability issue with possible whole tree failure, limb failure. So I think that it's best that the tree be removed.
Thank you for your time. If there's nobody else present that's in favor, like to be heard, and nobody's present that's opposed, close the application to the public. Open to the board. Discussion or a motion.
Well, I don't see being able to rejuvenate this tree and keep it. And clearly, if it was in the buffer, you know, fine, it might be good habitat, but where it is, it's, I would say, too unsafe to keep.
Looks like it looked nice though.
We have a motion.
I'll move to approve the staff recommendation.
Motion for approval by Ruthie. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Amanda. So approval with staff recommendations, all in favor?
I'm in favor.
I'm in favor. Any opposed? Approved unanimously 5-0. Thank you for your time. Amanda.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. I was very, let's do it.
Are we?
Meeting is adjourned.
So still could